Someone is thinking about you far more than you realize, and what they feel is not light, casual, or easy to control. It is deep. It is restless. It keeps returning when they try to push it away. And the strangest part is this. It may have very little to do with the version of you that the world sees on the surface. It has more to do with what your presence woke up inside them without warning. You did not chase it. You did not plan it. You did not even need to do anything dramatic. You simply touched a hidden place in them that had been silent for years, and now that silence is broken. Stay with me, because this is where it gets intense. What they feel is not just love in the simple sense. It is recognition, hunger, fear, memory, longing, and emotional truth all rising at once. And once that happens, nothing inside them stays the same. Most people think strong love begins with attraction, timing, chemistry, or shared interests. That idea feels safe, and safe ideas are easy to accept. But real intensity often begins somewhere much deeper in the hidden parts of the mind where logic has very little power. That is why some connections feel immediate, overwhelming, and almost impossible to explain. You did not just make this person happy. You made them feel understood in a way that shook them. You made them feel seen without trying too hard, and that kind of experience is rare. It is powerful. It can even feel dangerous, because when someone feels recognized at that level, they do not just enjoy your presence. They start attaching meaning to it. They begin to feel that you matter in a way they cannot fully explain. And once meaning enters emotion, everything grows stronger. This is not just admiration anymore. This is the beginning of a deep psychological pull, the kind that keeps replaying in silence long after the moment has passed. And if you have ever felt that strange tension around them, that quiet weight in the air, then you already know something unusual is happening here. What happened is simple on the outside but powerful underneath. You activated something buried, something they had hidden, denied, or forgotten. Maybe it was a need they never admitted. Maybe it was an old wound. Maybe it was the longing to be chosen, understood, wanted, or emotionally safe. Whatever it was, your presence touched it. Not because you tried to become special, but because something in the way you existed broke their usual pattern. You did not fit neatly into the boxes they used to understand people. You were not fully predictable. You were not easy to reduce. And that disruption caught their attention in a way routine never could. The mind depends on patterns. It likes what it can label and control. But when someone enters our life and feels meaningful in a way we cannot quickly define, the deeper mind starts working. It starts searching. It starts projecting. It starts asking silent questions. Why does this feel familiar? Why does this matter so much? Why does this person stay in my thoughts after everything else fades? And that is when the attachment begins to deepen, not through reason, but through emotional symbolism. Keep listening, because this next part explains why letting go becomes so hard. They did not only begin to notice you, they began to read you as an answer to a question they may never have spoken out loud, an answer to an emptiness they carried for years without knowing how to name it. This is why the feeling became more than attraction. Attraction can fade, curiosity can pass, but when someone starts connecting you to something unfinished inside themselves, the bond becomes heavy. You are no longer just a person in front of them. You become a symbol. You represent comfort, possibility, healing, desire, or even the life they feel they missed. And once a person becomes a symbol in the emotional mind, detachment gets harder than most people imagine. Because now walking away from you does not feel like losing one connection. It feels like losing access to something essential. That is why their reaction may seem stronger than the situation itself. That is why their silence can feel loaded. That is why their eyes sometimes say more than their words ever do. They are not only responding to who you are, they are responding to what you have come to mean inside them. And meanings formed in the hidden mind do not disappear just because someone wants peace. This is also why their behavior may feel mixed, uncertain, or hard to read. One moment they seem drawn in completely. The next moment they step back, go quiet, or act like nothing is happening. That shift does not always mean the feeling is gone. Very often, it means the opposite. It means the feeling is too strong, too exposing, too difficult for their defenses to handle. Part of them wants closeness. Part of them sees closeness as a threat. Not because you are dangerous, but because emotional exposure is. To care this deeply means to risk rejection, vulnerability, loss of control, and old pain returning. So they move closer, then retreat. They open, then close. They imagine, then resist. This push and pull is not random. It is what happens when desire and fear wake up at the same time. And if you have been confused by that inconsistency, here is the truth. They are not confused about your impact. They are overwhelmed by their own internal reaction to it. Big difference. Their mind is trying to protect them, while their deeper emotional world is pulling them toward what they cannot stop feeling. At first, they likely tried to reduce it. They told themselves it was a passing fascination, a moment, a phase, a mood that would disappear with distance or time. But instead of fading, it grew. Quietly, slowly, deeply. Because the hidden mind does not forget what feels meaningful. It stores what is unresolved. It keeps emotional fragments alive until something brings them back to the surface. And somehow, without effort, you became that trigger. You became the person who unlocked what had been sleeping in them for years. This is where the situation becomes even more intense, because what rises from that depth is rarely neat or simple. It comes mixed with longing, fear, fantasy, unfinished grief, and old emotional hunger. They may not even understand why you stay on their mind the way you do. They may analyze every conversation, replay small details, and search for meaning in moments that looked ordinary from the outside. Not because they want to be consumed by it, but because the feeling has attached itself to something deeper than daily logic. And when that happens, even silence becomes loud. Even absence starts speaking. Even a small interaction can echo inside them for days. Distance in situations like this does not always create peace. Sometimes it makes everything stronger. When reality is removed, imagination takes over, and imagination can turn emotional attachment into something even more powerful. The less they see you, the more space they have to fill in the blanks. The more they wonder. The more they project. The more they idealize. You stop being only a real person with real limits and become an inner image shaped by desire, memory, and emotional need. That inner image can grow far beyond the truth, and that is why the bond begins to feel almost impossible for them to shake. They are no longer only attached to your actual presence. They are attached to the version of you their inner world has built around the feeling you awakened. And that version becomes emotionally necessary. Stay with me here, because this is one of the hardest truths in the entire dynamic. The more they try to escape the feeling without understanding it, the more power they give it. Suppression does not erase deep emotion. It feeds it. What they refuse to face becomes what quietly controls them. That is why thoughts of you return in random moments, in dreams, in silence, in distraction, in the middle of an otherwise normal day. The pressure inside them keeps building because the mind can only hold contradiction for so long. One side says move closer. Another side says protect yourself. One side wants honesty. Another side wants control. One side feels that this connection means something real. Another side fears what that truth would demand. So they live in tension. They feel everything, yet express very little. They want to say more, then stop themselves. They almost reveal something, then pull back hard. On the outside, they may still look calm, even composed. But inside, there is movement. There is strain. There is the exhausting effort of trying to contain something that does not want to stay contained. And this is where many people misunderstand the situation. They assume silence means weakness of feeling. Not always. Sometimes silence is the clearest sign that the feeling has become too intense to manage cleanly. What cannot be spoken often becomes behavior. It becomes hesitation. It becomes overthinking. It becomes restless energy, sudden distance, strange timing, or emotional signals that appear and disappear before they can be explained. If you have felt that strange current between you, that sense that something unspoken keeps pressing against the surface, you are not imagining it. What makes this so difficult for them is that your presence does not only stir desire, it stirs self-confrontation. Loving you or even feeling pulled toward you forces them to face parts of themselves they would rather avoid. It brings up what they lost, what they lacked, what they never received, and what they secretly still hope for. It can remind them of the version of themselves they never became. More open, more brave, more emotionally honest, less defended, less afraid. And that realization carries weight, because now the feeling is not just about wanting you. It is also about grieving what has been missing inside them all along. You begin to represent not only connection but possibility. Not only affection but emotional truth. And emotional truth is powerful because it does not politely ask for attention. It demands it. That is why the bond can feel beautiful and unstable at the same time. Beautiful because it touches something real. Unstable because it threatens the identity they built just to survive. And identities built on protection do not soften easily. They resist. They explain. They deny. They delay. But the deeper feeling remains, steady beneath all of it. So they start telling themselves stories. Maybe this is temporary. Maybe they are imagining it. Maybe they are just lonely, just curious, just emotional, just overthinking. But these explanations are usually not real understanding. They are attempts to contain the experience so it feels smaller, safer, easier to manage. Because if they fully admitted the depth of what they feel, then they would have to face what it reveals. They would have to admit that this connection reached them in a place few people ever do. They would have to admit that being near you changes something in them. They would have to admit that losing the chance to move closer might hurt more than they want to confess. That is why resistance often grows right beside desire. The stronger the emotion, the stronger the defense. And yet, even with all that resistance, the pull does not vanish. It stays quiet, constant, present beneath everything. It shows up as anxiety, as longing, as an unexplained absence when you are not there. It shows up in the way they scan for signs, remember details, return to moments, and keep feeling that something about you matters beyond reason. And once that pattern begins, normal distance rarely solves it. Only truth can. There comes a point when internal pressure becomes too heavy to carry in silence. The hidden mind keeps pushing for release, and release does not always come gently. Sometimes it comes as a confession, sometimes as sudden withdrawal, sometimes as behavior that seems irrational, emotional, or self-sabotaging. Because when someone has spent too long trying to manage a feeling that keeps growing, their control starts to crack. Small cracks first, a longer look, a strange pause, an almost message, a question they did not need to ask, a reaction stronger than the moment required, then maybe a retreat right after, because they feel exposed by what slipped through. This cycle can continue for a while, but not forever. Sooner or later something has to give. That is not drama. That is psychological reality. Human beings are not built to carry unresolved emotional conflict endlessly without consequence. If it is not processed, it leaks. If it is not faced, it transforms. It becomes tension in the body, restlessness in the mind, heaviness in the heart. And when enough of that builds up, one moment changes everything. Watch this carefully, because when that moment comes, it may look sudden from the outside, even though it has been forming for a long time. By then, what they feel is no longer just a private attraction. It has become a challenge to the entire structure they use to stay emotionally safe. Being pulled toward you means becoming someone more exposed, more honest, more open than they are used to being. And that can feel terrifying. Not because openness is bad, but because unfamiliar openness feels unstable to a person who survived by controlling emotion. So even as they want closeness, they fear what closeness will ask from them. Vulnerability, surrender, truth, the dropping of old armor, the ending of old stories. And those things do not happen without inner resistance. This is why they can seem split in two. One part wants to step forward and stop hiding. The other part wants to run before the feeling changes them too much. But here is the reality that keeps haunting them. Moving away does not end it. It only carries the unresolved feeling into the next day, the next week, the next quiet moment where your absence becomes loud again. There is no easy escape once a person has linked you to something essential in their inner world. That is why the tension keeps returning. That is why the thought of you keeps surviving every attempt to make it smaller. And the deeper truth may be the hardest one of all. What you awakened in them is not only a desire for you. It is a desire for emotional wholeness, for the part of themselves that has been starving for connection, recognition, and honesty. You became the mirror that reflected what was missing. You showed them a hunger they did not want to name. You brought them face to face with the distance between who they are now and who they might have been if fear had not shaped so much of their emotional life. That is why the connection feels so heavy. It is not just romance. It is identity-level tension. Being near you feels like standing near a different version of themselves, one that is softer, fuller, and more alive. But it also means seeing how long they have lived defended, disconnected, and half-hidden. And not everyone is ready for that kind of truth. Some will reach for it. Some will resist it. Most will do both. This is why their energy can feel intense even when their words are few. This is why the bond can feel real even without a full explanation. The deeper mind always knows when something matters before the conscious mind catches up. So if you have been wondering why they cannot just let it go, why the feeling seems to stay alive even when they step back, this is why. You did not simply enter their life. You entered their unfinished story. You touched unresolved emotion. You disturbed what had been buried. You became connected to memory, longing, pain, hope, and the possibility of emotional truth. And once someone links you to all of that, letting go is no longer a simple decision. It becomes an internal battle. One side wants peace through distance. The other wants relief through honesty. One side wants to preserve control. The other wants to stop pretending. And in that struggle, they may look inconsistent, but underneath the inconsistency is one clear fact. You matter to them far more than they are comfortable admitting. Remember that, because what looks like mixed signals on the surface can hide a very real storm underneath. And if this message is reaching you at the right time, then you already feel it too. You have sensed the weight. You have noticed the silence. You have seen that look that says more than words. And now you know why it exists. In the end, the real question is not whether the feeling is strong. It is. The real question is what they will do with it. Will they face what this connection reveals, or keep exhausting themselves trying to bury it? Will they choose honesty, or stay trapped in the cycle of wanting and resisting? Because the truth is, what has been awakened in them will not quietly go back to sleep. It will keep asking for resolution. It will keep returning in thought, emotion, and inattention until something becomes clear. And that clarity always has a cost. It may cost them pride. It may cost them comfort. It may cost them the identity they built around emotional distance. But avoiding the truth has a cost too. It becomes regret. It becomes longing. It becomes the slow ache of wondering what they lost by staying afraid. So if they seem silent, do not always mistake silence for emptiness. If they seem distant, do not always mistake distance for indifference. Sometimes the deepest feeling is hidden behind the strongest defense. Sometimes the person pulling away is the person feeling the most. And sometimes the connection that makes the least sense to the mind is the one that reaches deepest into the soul. If you have stayed with me this far, then you understand something most people miss. Some people do not fall in love because everything is easy. They fall because something in them has finally been awakened, and after that, nothing feels ordinary again.